Hey everybody, wanted to talk to you about a question that I get asked fairly regularly, and that question is, why do we need such a big list? Okay, so um, different people are going to tell you different things about how many schools you need on your list. My standard answer, especially for athletes that are just starting out in the process, is that they need 50 schools on their list. That's 50, so 50 schools on their list. So, Jason, why do we need so many schools on our list to start? Um, really, it's just a numbers game in a lot of different ways. If you start with a list that's too small, you could very easily end up with zero schools on your list and zero potential interest from any of the schools on your list. And then you have to start all over. Okay, and when you repeat that process too many times, you end up missing out on opportunities on schools because they are going through the process also, and you might have three lists of 10, right? By the time you get to your 20 through 30 schools, those schools have already located and targeted their athletes that they're interested and looking at, and you've kind of missed, right? So we start big and then work our way down. The other thing that comes into play, or several things that come into play, one is just ability and where you fit athletically and where you fit talent-wise. That's a huge part of it. And then the other part is just who's recruiting your position in your class. So if you are a lefty right side, okay, you're a three rotation right side hitter. Well, depending on what sort of offensive scheme I have, 1-5-1, 6-2, depending on how many athletes are in front of you, I just don't need you on my roster potentially. I don't necessarily have a fit for you. Even if I do really like you and you might really be a good fit, I've already got a senior and incoming freshman ahead of you. I don't really need necessarily another lefty right side on my roster in that situation. Okay, another circumstance is setters. Okay, and going through this right now with an athlete, where we have a list of schools and we're just trying to figure out, we're trying to filter through who right now is running a 6-2. Are those schools going to transition into a 5-1, or are they going to stay at a 6-2? What are those schools? Okay, now that we're targeting and figuring out what those schools are, where those schools are, we're running into the whether or not they're recruiting a setter in that class. And so our list tends to get whittled down with a lot of outside factors. And if we start really, really small, then our list gets whittled down to nothing, which is not what we want. But when we start with a list like 50, as long as we are targeting schools that are going to be a good fit athletically, then we can get that list whittled down to something that's more manageable come June 15th, to the contact date for these athletes, and get the list down to like 10 to 15 of schools that are interested, schools that are recruiting your position, schools that are a good fit for you, all of those things. And then we end up with more schools that have a high interest and that are going to be a good fit potentially for the athlete, that we have a lot of mutual interest in. And so that's why I encourage athletes and families to start off with maybe what would be considered a bigger list than some other schools or some other recruiting people.